Have you ever noticed how we describe the things we love most? We say we are married to our work. We say our office is our second home. We even tell our coworkers that they are like family. We use the language of love to describe our jobs because it makes the long hours feel noble. It makes the stress feel like a sacrifice for a higher cause. But there is a silent cold truth sitting at the desk next to you every morning. That truth is that your job, no matter how much heart you pour into it, is incapable of feeling anything for you. It is a contract, not a relationship. We have been raised in a world that tells us if we do what we love, we will never work a day in our life. But the reality is often the exact opposite. When we do what we love, we often work harder, longer, and for less appreciation because we feel that the work itself is the reward. We are going to dive into the complicated relationship between our hearts and our bank accounts. We will look at why the most meaningful jobs like teaching, nursing, and creative arts are often the ones that leave us the most exhausted. We will explore how the loss of a factory or a career is actually a form of deep communal grief that we rarely name. It is a journey from being a devoted employee to becoming a person who understands their own worth outside of a paycheck. Most importantly, we will see why the path to a better life is not found in working harder but in finding a way to care for ourselves and each other when the clock stops ticking. We are currently living through a major shift in how we see our place in the world. For decades, the goal was simple. Find a stable job, climb the ladder, and stay there for 30 years. But that world is disappearing. We saw this clearly during the recent pandemic, where the line between home and office vanished for millions. Suddenly, the essential workers were the ones making the lowest wages while the dream jobs were being cut overnight. We are in a moment of collective exhaustion. People are realizing that the old blueprint for success, giving everything to your career in exchange for a sense of identity, is broken. We see this in the quiet quitting movement and the mass resignations happening across industries. We are trying to find a balance in a system that was not designed for balance. We are trying to find meaning in a landscape where traditional community spaces like union halls or local social clubs have been replaced by digital screens. This is the context of our modern struggle. We are searching for a human life in a world that only values productivity. On the surface, we believe that loving our work is the ultimate protection against burnout. The surface concept is that if you find your passion, you will be happy. We look at a nurse or a teacher and assume their exhaustion is just part of the job description because they care so much. We assume that a person who works for a nonprofit is morally satisfied, so they do not need a high salary or a weekend off. On the surface, work-life balance is treated like a personal time management problem. If you are stressed, you just need to meditate more or use a better calendar app. This surface view places all the responsibility on the individual. It suggests that if you are unhappy at work, it is because you have not found the right fit or you are not resilient enough. We treat the office like a family because it sounds warm, but on the surface we forget that a family does not fire you when the budget gets tight. This surface understanding keeps us running on a treadmill, chasing an approval that never actually arrives. Behind this surface desire for meaningful work lies a hidden assumption that our value as human beings is tied to our productivity. We often assume that if we are not doing something, we are not anyone. This is a hidden logic that says a person without a job is a person without a purpose. We assume that the care provided by nurses or teachers is an infinite resource that can be tapped into without cost. The hidden reality is that labors of love are often the most exploited because the system knows you will not walk away from a patient or a student. There is a hidden assumption that capitalism and love can occupy the same space. However, the hidden truth is that capitalism requires efficiency and love requires time and inefficiency. We assume that when an industry dies, like coal mining or manufacturing, the only thing lost is a paycheck. The hidden reality is the death of a social world. When the mine closes, the wedding hall closes, the christenings stop, and the community heart is torn out. This hidden grief is what we often mistake for simple economic disruption. This leads us to a structural pattern of how we organize our lives around the clock of capitalism. We see a pattern where work expands to fill every available second of our lives through smartphones and hustle culture. This structure makes it impossible to truly leave work at the office. We see another structural pattern in how we treat care work. Historically, jobs done by women or in the domestic sphere are paid less because they are seen as natural rather than skilled. This structure persists even as men enter these fields. For instance, statistics from the U.S. Department of Labor show that in 2024 women still earned approximately 83% of what men earned. Specifically in service and care industries, these gaps are often wider because the work is treated as a labor of love rather than a technical skill. We also see a structural pattern of disenfranchised grief. This is a grief that the world does not recognize as valid. When a factory closes, the workers are expected to just retrain and move on. There is no funeral for a lost way of life, no wake for a town identity. This lack of structure for mourning makes the pain turn toxic, affecting physical health and social trust. We can reframe our entire perspective by seeing work not as our identity but as a tool we use to support our real life. Instead of asking what do I want to be, we can reframe the question to how do I want to live. We can reframe the idea of a good employee to a solidarity-minded worker. This means realizing that your working conditions are someone else's learning or healing conditions. When teachers strike for smaller classes, they are not just fighting for themselves. They are fighting for the common good. We can reframe grief as a circular process rather than a linear one. Just as a person undergoes change while grieving a parent, a community undergoes change when its industry shifts. We can reframe the middle voice in our lives, the space where we are neither the actor nor the victim but a part of a process that is doing us. This perspective shift allows us to stop trying to get an A in grieving or working and instead allow ourselves to be human in the messiness of it all. Applying this to your daily life starts with the radical act of talking to your peers. You can apply the principle of common good by asking your coworkers how they are really doing. Are they struggling to pay rent? Are they feeling the same pressure you are? Use a protected space like a private phone call or a walk in the park, not the work email, to build these connections. You can apply work to rule in your own boundaries. Do your job well, but do not do the invisible work that the boss assumes you will do for free because you love it. Apply this by reclaiming your social spaces. Find a hobby or a group that has nothing to do with making money. Whether it is a community garden, a sports team, or a religious group, these are the welfare halls of the modern era. In your personal life, apply the circular view of grief. When a hard day hits you years after a loss, do not tell yourself you should be over it. Instead, tell yourself that grieving is doing you today and that is okay. It is helpful to remember that the most important parts of you are the parts that cannot be bought or sold. We are moving from a world that demands our total devotion to a world where we demand our own time back. The ashes of the old system are still warm, but from them we can build something more durable. We are finding that solidarity, the act of grabbing the person next to you when the wall starts to cave in, is the highest form of care. This is true in a coal mine, and it is true in a hospital or a classroom. We are learning that the public good is not a budget line but a promise we make to keep each other above water. As we move forward, we must remember that we are not exterior to the process of change. We are in the middle of it. We are the architects of a world where a person can be an engineer, a nurse, or a waiter and still have enough of themselves left over to enjoy a free ferry ride or a quiet afternoon with the people they love. We should also think about the concrete reality of these shifts. In many sectors, the change is already happening. For example, in 2024, healthcare workers across various regions secured better staffing ratios through collective action, showing that the value of care can be measured in hours and safety, not just in heart. If we look at the history of labor, we see that every weekend and every 8-hour day was won by people who realized that work wouldn't love them back. They had to love each other enough to fight for a life beyond the clock. This journey is not about hating our jobs. It is about loving ourselves more. It is about realizing that when we leave the office, we carry our humanity with us. We are more than our titles, and we are more than our salaries. We are friends and neighbors and parents. We are people who feel joy and people who grieve. By making space for these truths, we build a society that is strong enough to hold us all. We find that the most meaningful work we ever do is the work of being a person in a world that is always trying to turn us into a machine. Let us embrace the middle voice where we undergo change and grow together. Let us acknowledge the grief of a changing world and the hope of a new way of connecting. If you were to look at your life outside of your job description, what are the 3 things that make you feel truly alive, and how much of your love are you saving for them?